Welcome to part 3 of our series on rhythm. Today we're talking about subdivision. This is the concept you need if you want to play rhythm more accurately with a better sense of groove, especially things that are syncopated and more complex rhythms between the hands. They really rely on an understanding of subdivision. So let's get into it. Subdivision slices the beat into smaller parts. To demonstrate, I'm going to play the same example we've been using. I want you to clap along, and I want you to listen if there are any note rhythms here that don't fall with your claps. It's in the second half there that we don't fall within this beat, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. We have this 1, 2, 3, 4. That note falls in between the beats. So if we want to count some sort of pulse that fits with that, we actually have to go smaller than the pulse we previously identified. We have to subdivide it even smaller, and we're going to use an and to do that. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So by adding in that and, we now have this grid of a subdivision that every single note in the music can fall onto. That's useful because it's easier for us to create a super even patter of whatever those syllables are, 1 and 2 and. We'll go to 1 E and up, 16th notes in a moment. It's easier for us to make that steady than it is to tell whether we're playing some sort of more complex rhythm accurately. Especially if you're playing with other interlocking parts in the music, whether it's your own left hand or whether it's other instruments in an ensemble. Everyone is going to belong to the subdivision grid. So if you can play accurately to the subdivision grid, you're all going to be able to fit better together than if you're just kind of shooting in the dark and hoping that your rhythms are going to line up well. So let's listen to a rhythm that requires an even smaller subdivision. If I count ands with that, there's actually one note in there that doesn't fit with the ands. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that one little note, it's the E again, is not fitting with the ands. We need to go one subdivision smaller to 16th notes. I often will count this 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2, and so on. So you can keep getting smaller with the subdivision. Occasionally, it's less common, but occasionally you'll need to go all the way down to 32nd notes or even 1/64th notes. You notice they're all multiples of 2 because we're cutting things in half. And in most situations, until we get to compound meter and swing, you're always going to be dividing beats into multiples of 2 like this. So if you go small enough with your subdivisions of the beat into multiples of 2, you're going to find that subdivision grid where every single note in the music can fall. You might be wondering, why don't we just call that smallest subdivision the beat, right? We defined pulse or the beat in music as a continuous, steady feeling of rhythm beneath the music. And that's exactly what we have here. The reason that we don't make the smallest subdivision the beat is because sometimes it's quite small and it's quite fast, right? It has to be as small and as fast as the quickest note in the music. So typically there's actually a more natural, larger pulse in the music. And we go smaller than it so that we can have quicker moving notes or syncopated rhythms that don't exactly fall onto the beats. Now you may also be wondering, what happens if instead of dividing the beat into 2, we divide the beat into 3 subdivisions? And in fact, that happens in a lot of music. And it's why we have something called compound meter. So that's what we will talk about next. Thanks for following along with this series on understanding rhythm. If you haven't already picked up the sheet music so you can follow along with these lessons, you can get that for free at pianofluency.com. Thanks for joining me. My name is Ted with Piano Fluency.